Back on the record at 10:53.
So, Mr. Ratliff, as you've noted on several occasions, I am asking you questions about events that have occurred, some years in the past, and I understand that. So I think what it makes sense to do is I'm going to start showing you documents that I think will help refresh your memory. You should review as much of the document as you need to be comfortable, but as some of these are, several pages, I will direct you to certain portions that I'm interested in. As I said, you should review as much of the document as you feel is appropriate. So why don't we start with what I believe is going to be Exhibit 3. And I think let's see, court reporter.
Try this.
Thank you.
And so I've handed you a document that's Bates number 388159. And it's a Mallinckrodt PowerPoint presentation. It's an overview presentation for new employee orientation. Do you recall this PowerPoint?
Yes.
And what do you recall about it? Well, strike that. Did you deliver this PowerPoint? Is this your PowerPoint presentation?
Objection.
Normally it was delivered by Karen Harper.
But you were involved in preparing it, were you not?
Yes.
And so it's several pages. I would like to focus your attention on the two org charts that are on pages 3 and 4 of the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Okay. So the first is an org chart for the security group organization.
Yes.
Is that your organization? Or is that the organization you were working in, the department you were working in?
Objection.
Yes.
And then if you put this up there, you'll see your name, Corporate Security Director for Covidian. Who is John Griffin?
Deputy Legal Counsel for Covidian.
And did you report directly to him?
I did.
And what was the nature of your communication? Did you provide monthly reports, or how did you communicate?
Objection.
Normally emails, occasional conversations on the phone, occasional in-person meetings.
And who is Jim O'Connor?
He's a security supervisor in St. Louis.
And do you see where it says security officers?
Yes.
Who are those, or what are those?
There were 14 officers that were all trained in in a law enforcement academy, former police officers, and they were charged with securing our facility there in St. Louis where we manufactured products.
And so we're talking physical security,
Yes.
Is that correct? And then there are a number of people that are reporting to Jim O'Connor that are security monitors. Do you see that?
Yes.
What is a security monitor?
Each building where narcotics are manufactured has a monitor. So anyone coming or going has to open their lunch box, they have to show them their coat, they have to basically take their hat off, pockets, pull their pockets out, everything, to ensure they're not diverting product.
And then if you turn the page over, it's going to be it's another org chart. It's the Controlled Substance Compliance Group organization. So who is Karen Harper?
Karen Harper is the DEA compliance manager.
And what did she do?
She was responsible for quota for all of the employees that control the quota in the manufacturing. Also, she was responsible for communicating with DEA on any discrepancies, or she had a wide range of responsibilities.
And who was responsible for the suspicious order monitoring program?
Karen,
Were you involved in that as well?
I assisted her, yes.
And what were your responsibilities with respect to the SOM program?
Well, to assist as necessary.
So did you have sort of defined tasks that you were responsible for, or was it primarily whatever Karen asked you to help her with?
Objection.
Primarily whatever Karen asked me to assist her with. Occasionally I went to audits when I was available, and I helped coordinate contact with DEA, the local DEA in St. Louis. So,
Were you involved in reviewing the policies that, we'll strike that. Were you involved in reviewing or revising suspicious order monitoring program policies?
Karen Harper wrote the program, but I assisted in that process.
And who is Joanne Levy, or Joanne Levy?
VP of Pharmaceutical Logistics.
And what did she do? What were her responsibilities?
That's outside my purview.
So I take it you didn't work directly with her.
No.
What about Eileen Spalding? What did she do?
She worked for Karen Harper in Hobart, New York.
And was Hobart your primary, well, I'm sorry, strike that. What was what function did the Hobart facility fulfill?
Objection.
They took the raw product and made tablet form and other products, so it wasn't all just tablets.
And do you know who Carrie Johnson was? Okay.
Not necessarily.
What about Mary Lewis?
Mary Lewis worked in St. Louis and worked for Karen, and she also worked at Webster Groves. We had a facility there with they were developing new products and so forth, and so she helped with the coordination there.
And I'm sorry, what function did the Webster Grove facility play?
They were research and development.
And do you know who Lee Nelson is?
I did. He's now deceased.
What were his responsibilities?
He monitored quota.
And what about Wendy Slavey?
And she worked for Karen.
And what about Christine Gregg? I'm sorry, Christy Kaye.
She worked for Karen.
But other than working for Karen, you don't know what their responsibilities were.
I don't.
And I take it you didn't work with either one of them.
Well, they were in close proximity to my office, but I didn't work specifically with them.
So you can put that aside. Okay, so I'm going to give you another PowerPoint marked Exhibit 4.
Thank you.
For this PowerPoint, I'd like to direct your attention to page 4 of it, which has another organizational chart.
Okay?
Now, Mallinckrodt had a suspicious order monitoring program, did it not?
Yes.
And it was required to have this program by the applicable law and DEA regulations, is that correct?
Objection.
Yes.
Can you look at this org chart and identify for me all of the people that you believe were involved in that suspicious order monitoring program?
Could you be more specific?
Well, there's a suspicious order monitoring program, and I would like to figure out what employees were involved in implementing that, well, either designing or implementing that program.
Objection.
Well, I would say Karen Harper specifically.
Yeah.
But everyone on this page had some responsibility. They were our logistics, they were our transportation, moving product from one place to another. So they're all responsible to prevent diversion.
Well, so do you see Michael Feeney?
I do.
What were his diversion control responsibilities?
Objection.
He didn't work for me. I know who Michael is. I know he controlled transportation of products. Beyond that, I really don't know what his responsibilities are.
Well, how about Jim Roush? Do you see his name? He's underneath Michael.
You're asking me questions about long ago in employees that weren't employed by me or I didn't work with on a daily basis or even sometimes didn't see for long periods of time.
Well, why don't we do this?
These were at headquarters in Hazelwood, and I was at the St. Louis plant. The times I was at Hazelwood they were brief and it was for a specific meeting.
So what individuals on this org chart did you work with in the context of the suspicious order monitoring program?
Karen Harper,
Anyone else?
and her team. I mean, they were right around the corner from my office. So if there were some questions, I could talk to them, but normally I did everything through Karen.
So you don't recall ever working with Jim Roush?
If you're asking, have I ever been in a meeting with Jim Roush? Probably.
Or communicated with him via email?
Probably, but I can't tell you specifically all these years later that that's a fact.
What about Kathy Stewart? Do you recall working with her?
I know Kathy Stewart because her husband is a security officer.
But other than through her husband, do you recall working with Kathy Stewart in the context of this suspicious order monitoring program?
Not specifically. If you have documents that you can refresh my memory, I'd be happy to review them.
Okay. Well, yeah. Why don't we do that then? So why don't we go with that one? So I'd like to mark this as exhibit. I believe it's 5.
Thank you.
Oh, the totals. Okay.
So maybe put the
Sure.
lapel instead.
Okay. Right here. Okay. So this is an email and an attachment with the Bates number 448772. And the title of the attachment is the Oxycodone Extended Release Risk Map Action Plan.
Okay.
Are you familiar with this risk map action plan?
I don't recall it.
You could turn to page 3 of the attachment. It says supply chain and security. And do you see your name identified for a number of these rows?
Yes.
So the first row is provide notification to DEA of any confirmed diversion.
Mhm.
Can you explain what does that mean?
If we have a diversion, they should tell me.
And I'm sorry, who should tell you?
The person that discovers the diversion or whoever's in charge of that particular event.
And then you would then report that to DEA?
Unless there was an investigation that was necessary. And then we would perform an investigation to try to determine what happened in that specific incident. And then we would report it to DEA.
Do you recall any specific incidents of diversion while you were the security director?
I'm certain there were some diversions. But specifically, no. I know that DEA, or not DEA, Hobart had several diversions. And I know they worked closely with DEA and the state police on those. I wasn't responsible for Hobart. They had a security manager there. But he would report all that to me, so I would be aware of it.
And the incidents that you are describing, are they essentially examples of theft? Someone walks off from the facility with bottles of pills?
Normally not bottles. It would be a few pills normally.
The third row says investigate abnormal orders.
Mm-hmm.
And it identifies Karen Harper and you as the point people. What did that entail?
Objection.
That entailed Karen at least advising me about it, and she normally handled all those matters. There was a time she worked for me, and then there was a time she apparently worked for Joanne Levy and others. So,
And roughly when did she work for you from, if you can recall?
I can't recall. I just know that she did work for me for a period of time. That's the best I can do.
And then was she promoted?
They just realigned responsibilities.
Do you know why they did that?
At the time, Joanne Levy wanted the DEA compliance group under the logistics. She thought it better fit than with security. That's what I was told.
Now it says investigate abnormal orders. What is an abnormal order?
From time to time, Karen would be advised that a customer had ordered a large amount, much more than they'd ever ordered in the past. So they would automatically give that to Karen to do an investigation to say, do you have any idea what's going on with this customer? So,
Are you familiar with the term peculiar order?
yes.
Okay,
Peculiar means it was excessive.
And is there a difference between an abnormal order and a peculiar order, or are they the same?
Objection.
Not in my mind. They're the same.
What about a suspicious order?
Objection.
I'm not sure how to define it at this point. It's just, I don't know that there's a difference in those terms.
So an abnormal order, I guess what I'm trying to understand is was there a difference with respect to Mallinckrodt's terminology between an abnormal order and a suspicious order?
Objection.
Not in my mind.
Now, can you turn to page 5 of this attachment?
Okay.
It says pharmacovigilance, surveillance, and epidemiology.
Say that again.
It says pharmacovigilance, surveillance, and epidemiology. Do you see that?
I do.
Okay, and the first row references receive, capture, and monitor adverse events. Do you know what an adverse event is?
Not necessarily.
So I take it wasn't, you didn't ever identify or report an adverse event.
Objection.
This has been a long time ago. If you'd asked me contemporaneous when this was written, or I would have probably had an answer. Today, I would be guessing if I said what that means. You're showing me documents that are, I haven't thought about in all these years. And this is the first time I've seen this document today since I probably worked there 6.5 years ago, or probably years before that.
Well, and so my question is, as you sit here today, do you have any recollection of what an adverse event means?
No.
Okay. Did you ever work with Maria Chianta?
That name's not familiar.
Okay.
If you have a document that identifies me working with her, you could show it to me, and I'd be happy to talk about it, but right now I have no idea who she is.
Well, sir, your name appears in this document. Did you review it?
Probably at that time I reviewed it, but it's been a great deal of time removed since I would have done this, and maybe I would have reviewed it one time.
Well, going back to the supply chain and security, are these tasks and responsibilities accurate?
Objection. You're talking about everything written here?
No, I'm talking about the ones that reference you.
Without going through every line of everything, I would think that if it's written like this, it would probably be accurate. But I can't make that statement today because, I haven't read every line of this document.
Okay. And then turning to page 5, I'm just trying to understand what interaction, if any, you had with this group of people and the work they were doing. So this is now pharmacovigilance, surveillance, and epidemiology. Do you see that?
Okay?
Are you familiar with the AERS database? It's AERS.
No. Not today, I have not. So,
And are you familiar with a risk map report?
it just doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. What about one of the rows is monitor longitudinal patient data for patterns of abuse. Was that something you were ever involved in?
Please repeat.
One of the rows indicates monitor longitudinal patient data for patterns of abuse. Was that ever a task that you were involved in?
I don't think so.
The next task is issue 15-day alert report involving oxycodone ER regardless of outcome of the following: all medication errors involving breaking, chewing, crushing, accidental overdoses, adverse events in children under 18. Is that a responsibility that you were ever involved in, or a task that you were ever involved in?
No. Are these employees of Mallinckrodt?
To be honest, sir, I don't know. I'm just reading them
Yeah.
off of this.
Well,
this
the reason is
attachment.
I don't know who these people are, and I don't know that I've ever heard their names. So I was just wondering if you're asking me questions about people that weren't even with Mallinckrodt. So
Well, and you don't have any familiarity with the risk map action plan.
to the best of my knowledge, no.
So you don't know if this was prepared, strike that. You don't know if this was prepared specifically for oxycodone or whether this was prepared for all of their products?
I have no way to know that.
The email is from Kimberly France to Kate Mullenkamp. Do you know who Kimberly France is?
Nope,
Okay. What about Kate Mullenkamp?
I don't think so.
go with 2777066. So this is Exhibit 6. Thank you. So, Mr. Ratliff, I've handed you Exhibit 6, which is another PowerPoint. It's Bates number 277066. And it
Yes.
is the Mallinckrodt Controlled Substance Suspicious Order Monitoring Program, Introductory Training for Field Sales. Are you familiar with this PowerPoint?
This is 2008, 10 years ago. I know that we had PowerPoints such as this. I can't recall this specifically.
But would you have helped prepare this type of a PowerPoint?
Objection.
If I can't remember it, I can't tell you if I helped prepare it. It doesn't seem, I don't know. I don't think so, but
Would you have ever delivered this type of a PowerPoint?
Objection.
normally not. Sorry, normally not.
So directing your attention to page 3.
What page?
Page 3 of the PowerPoint.
Okay.
So it says the Mallinckrodt Suspicious Order Monitoring Procedure Team. Do you see that?
Yes.
And it identifies you as a member of this team. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And so, well, strike that. Do you recall when this team was formed?
I don't recall the team specifically. My name was used in instances such as this because I should be involved if there's a problem. So, was I on the team? Probably. Did they meet? I couldn't tell you that today at all.
Well, do you recall being involved in a suspicious order monitoring team while you were at Mallinckrodt?
No.
So you don't recall, well, you've indicated that you didn't work directly with Joanne Levy. Do you recall working with John Adams?
I don't know who he is.
Okay. And you don't know who Kimberly France is. You know Karen Harper.
I do.
You don't know Michael Feeney, is that?
I do know who Michael Feeney is.
Okay. But you don't recall working with him?
He was not a direct report to me. Did we know one another? Yes.
Well, my question is a little more specific, sir. I'm talking about in the context of the Suspicious Order Monitoring Program for Mallinckrodt. Do you recall working with Mr. Feeney?
I can say with some reasonable memory that there may have been occasions where he and I discussed something about transportation. So, but this is, I think, 8 years ago or 10 years ago?
And I think we've already gone over Mr. Roush, and you don't recall working with him in the context of the SOM program. Is that fair?
I know who he is.
Okay. Kathy Stewart, you only know because her husband was a security officer. Is that right?
Objection.
I know that Kathy and Karen had interaction.
Okay. And did those interactions involve you, though?
Normally not.
What about Susan Marlatt?
I can't remember her at all.
And for the team advisors, do you know what role they played? Well, strike that. Do you recall ever interacting with Jerry Moss in the context of this SOM program?
I don't recall that today.
What about Jason Jones?
I don't know who that is.
Jeff Bird?
Means nothing.
Bob Lisnak?
I don't know that I ever worked directly with him. I mean, I'd say no because I just can't recall.
Okay. And we've covered Eileen Spalding, right?
I know who Eileen is. She worked for Karen at Hobart.
So you've got a suspicious order monitoring team, but you don't recall whether they had any meetings, and you don't recall participating in any meetings. Is that correct?
Objection. I'm saying it was 10 years ago, and I don't recall.
Oh, I
That's what I'm
understand that,
saying.
sir.
So to try to indicate that I don't know if I attended meetings or not, because I don't specifically remember this.
So, well, do you have any memory of what this team was supposed to do?
I have no memory of this at all. There were a number of things I was involved in and would have met in and so forth 10 years ago, but I don't recall it. That's the best I can do.
Okay, so if you turn over the page, it's DEA policy on suspicious orders. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so according to this PowerPoint, DEA regulations require registrants to design and operate a suspicious order identification system. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
And it requires that registrants report suspicious orders to DEA when discovered through monitoring. Do you agree with that?
I would, yes.
The registrant is reminded that their responsibility does not end merely with the filing of a suspicious order report. Do you agree with that?
I do.
And what do you interpret that to mean? That the responsibility does not end merely with the filing of a suspicious order report?
Means if there's an investigation needed, that we conduct the investigation and we provide follow-up information.
So put another way, it's not sufficient to simply identify a suspicious order and then ship the order. Is that fair?
Objection.
There's a difference in what you're saying. You're saying, repeat what you're asking, please.
So one of the consequences of this requirement is that it would not be adequate to simply identify a suspicious order to the DEA and then ship that order. Is that fair?
Objection.
If you go on, it says that registrant must conduct an independent analysis of suspicious orders prior to completing a sale to determine whether the controlled substances are likely to be diverted. So to me, if you go there, yes, that's true.
Yeah. And when it says conduct an independent analysis of suspicious orders, what does it mean to conduct an independent analysis?
I know that these came to Karen and that there were certain things that she would do. She would do certain checks. She would check with DEA, but she would also go on the internet and look at she had the ability to look at the building and to see if it was a real site, especially with new orders. There were a number of things that she could do to fulfill that.
And did you assist her in this independent analysis of suspicious orders?
On occasion.
And what type of assistance did you provide?
Going on the internet and looking up to see if it was a legitimate building, that how long had they been there, and if they owned it or if they rented, and if it appeared that they had the requisite storage facilities and so forth. There are other things, I just don't remember what they all were. So.
And Mallinckrodt had these obligations by virtue of the fact that it was a registrant under the Controlled Substances Act. Is that correct?
Objection.
Correct.
Now, the bottom bullet point says there are currently 1,288,992 DEA registrants. DEA must rely on the states and the individual registrants to monitor. Would you agree with that statement?
It was my understanding that they had more responsibility than just telling the registrants it's their responsibility, especially in '08. So I don't know who wrote this, and I just don't know who wrote it. So am I absolutely clear and believe that? Not necessarily.
Well, if there are over 1 million DEA registrants, doesn't DEA have to rely on these registrants to do their monitoring?
Objection.
How else would the system work if that wasn't the case?
Objection.
We all have a program in place to do that. So the answer is, do they rely on us? Yes. Some of these registrants are little tiny things. They have one product or whatever. So it makes it look like a huge number if you look at everyone that's registered to do anything. But there are a lot of people registered with DEA that don't manufacture narcotics. There aren't that many, is what I'm saying.
And when you say there aren't that many, what you're saying is there are not that many registrants. You think this number
I'm
is...
saying that manufacture pain medicine, pain pills, pain products. And I may be wrong. But I think I'm surprised by that number. How about that?
But it's certainly fair to say that the DEA was relying on Mallinckrodt to do its part to monitor suspicious orders.
Objection.
That's correct.
And then if you flip the page to page 5,
Okay.
first bullet point is failure to maintain effective controls against diversion is inconsistent with the public interest. So in other words, this is simply that Mallinckrodt has a duty to maintain effective controls against diversion. Is that another way of saying this?
Objection.
Yes.
Now there's a letter that seems to be placed on the side. Do you see or it's a picture of a letter. Do you see that?
I see there's a letter there.
Okay. And if you can make out the date, it's December 27, 2007.
Yeah, I can see that again.
Okay, is this the 2007 Ranasisi letter?
Objection.
I have my bifocals and I have my reading glasses, and I just can't see well enough to verify
Fair
what
enough.
you're saying.
Do you recall Mr. Ranasisi sending out a letter to registrants in 2007?
I don't recall it specifically, no.
Okay. What about sending out a letter in 2006?
It's just too long ago.
Okay. So page 6 is recent DEA actions involving distributors. Do you see that?
Yes.
Did Mallinckrodt follow these DEA actions involving the distributors?
Objection.
Yes.
Why?
DEA, if they suspended a license, then they wouldn't be licensed to have our product.
Was Mallinckrodt concerned internally about the DEA actions involving distributors?
Objection.
Our customers are the distributors. They send it to their distribution centers. So be clear about what you're talking about. A distribution center is not, it's our customer's distribution center. So did Amerisource, we did audits of some of these, I can recall.
Well, did the DEA actions involving the distributors raise any concerns at Mallinckrodt regarding either your SOM program?
Objection.
No. And the reason is these distributors had multiple distribution centers. If they closed one, they didn't close all of the distribution centers, they closed one. And it may be for whatever reason. If they did an audit, they had product inappropriately stored, or it could be a number of things. I don't know. But I think what you're talking about are distribution centers that they utilized to store their product when it went out to their customers in those areas.
Well, underneath the heading, it says DEA suspends licenses of distributors for not maintaining effective controls against diversion of controlled substances. Do you see that?
I see that.
And do you recall what the DEA's concerns were with respect to the failure to maintain effective controls for these institutions?
No.
So can you turn to page 8 of this PowerPoint?
I can.
And it says revised controlled substance suspicious order monitoring procedure highlights. Do you see that?
Okay.
Can you review that list for me and let me know when you're done?
Okay.
Is this an accurate description of your suspicious order monitoring procedure?
Yes.
And when was this procedure in effect from?
Say again.
When was this procedure in effect from? What time period did it cover, roughly?
Based on the PowerPoint, it would be June 5th of 2008.
And do you know how far back it went?
I don't know.
Do you recall it changing at some point in the future?
I don't recall.
Now it says security and DEA compliance will work closely with the business in reviewing peculiar orders and escalation to suspicious order status. Do you see that?
Yes.
And security would be you, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. What does it mean for security and DEA compliance to work closely with the business? Who is the business?
DEA compliance managed this. If there was an issue, she would bring it to my attention if she needed additional assistance or guidance. Who she dealt with at this time, I can't remember 10 years ago. I can't remember.
Okay, though it says security and DEA compliance, so both of you will work closely with the business. And so I'm asking, from your standpoint as the security person,
Yes.
you know, how did you work with the business in reviewing peculiar orders and the escalation of suspicious
Well, all
orders?
of this listed above that would come to Karen Harper, and if she had an issue with it and couldn't resolve it, she would bring it to me. Does that
Okay,
help?
but my question relates to the bottom of the page. And I'm asking, you know, what is your understanding of how you were going to work with the business in reviewing peculiar orders and the escalation to suspicious order status?
Objection.
I simply can't recall.
Okay. Now, the second part of that phrase, reviewing peculiar orders and escalation to suspicious order status. What do you interpret that to mean?
It's been 10 years. I don't recall. I just don't remember.
So one of the items above says an algorithm is customized by customer category class of trade. Do you see that?
I see it.
And do you have any recollection of an algorithm being used?
We used algorithms at one point to, if anyone was had ordered more of a particular product, and we sent that to DEA. So I remember that.
But you don't recall anything about the algorithm, what its components were, or anything like that?
10 years, I don't recall.
Okay. Do you recall being asked to review peculiar orders?
There were times that Karen Harper would bring something in that she couldn't resolve, and I know that I would help her at that time. But I can't be more specific than that. I just know that we work together on things like this.
Do you recall any instances in which when Harper shared concerns from business managers with you regarding suspicious orders?
Objection.
I don't recall.
So turning to page 9.
Okay.
It's a revised controlled substance suspicious order customer checklist.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any recollection of a customer checklist?
I do.
And who designed that checklist?
Karen.
Did you have any input into it?
Karen's pretty capable of doing things like this. Did I approve it or did I look at it? I'm certain that I probably looked at it at some point. But did I make additions or deletions? It's way too long ago. I don't recall.
Okay. And underneath it says to be completed by field sales.
Mm-hmm.
And it says know your customer is a goal. Is that accurate?
I would say yes.
So as of the date of this PowerPoint, which is June 5th, 2008, your understanding is that there was an obligation for Mallinckrodt to know its customer. Is that accurate?
Objection.
What we did is we developed a form to give us additional information to do that, and that's what that form did. It required all kinds of things to be filled out to give us additional information, and that was, I think, assisted us to know who our customers' were.
And part of this form is a description of the neighborhood, requires an on-site visit, physical description of facility or photos, and includes a list of indicators. So are those statements accurate with respect to what the information that was being collected by this customer checklist?
Objection.
To the best of my memory.
And to be clear, this was an obligation that Mallinckrodt believed it had based on the applicable law, correct? This wasn't a voluntary endeavor.
Objection.
You're wrong. It was a voluntary endeavor to know more about those customers, to create a better program to comply with the law. So we did this. DEA didn't say, make a form and do this. We did this on our own, based on what Karen believed would be helpful. So.
And what she believed was necessary to comply with your requirement or your obligation to maintain effective controls against diversion, correct?
We were constantly trying to improve.
And in 2008, one of the ways you believed, well, strike that. In 2008, one of the factors that you believed would help you improve would be knowing your customer's customer. Is that right?
Yes.
Objection.
Sorry.
And why is it important to know the description of the neighborhood? I'm still on slide 9, on page 9.
It's an additional factor.
But of what significance? Why does it help you in your analysis?
It's just an additional factor. We had everything up, and you'd like to know where it is. Is it Is it a legitimate building? Is it in a hospital complex or in a, it depends on where it is. If it's something that doesn't appear to be a legitimate business, that would be of concern to us. If it's down an alley in the back of a store, that would be a concern for us.
And the line that says requires an on-site visit inside and out, what is that in reference to?
It's to the salespeople signing them up.
So prior to signing up a customer, the salesperson was required to conduct an on-site visit?
Objection.
Say that again.
Prior to signing someone up, the salesperson was required to conduct an on-site visit?
Objection.
Apparently.
And then the last line is includes a list of indicators, watch-outs that require further review by security director. Security director is you, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And so what is the list of indicators that require further review?
If they sent this to me, I would look at it not only from a security director point of view, but a law enforcement point of view. And we had customers in the Northeast that didn't appear to be pharmacies at all, and yet they were trying to buy our product and somehow had gotten a registration. So we wanted to see exactly where and what the business was. So there are a lot of factors that you look at, and that's exactly what this is.
Yeah. And you referenced pharmacies, so we're talking about your customer's customer at this point, correct?
Objection.
The distributors sold to pharmacies.
And what these bullet points are referencing, though, is it's an on-site visit to the pharmacy.
We were trying
Objection.
You can answer.
We were trying to identify our customers' customers to be more in tune with the program, to improve our program.
Okay, thank you. You can put that aside. Okay. Okay, so this is now going to be Exhibit 7.
Only have 2 of these, sorry.
Thank you.
So this is an email marked Bates number 4211219. And at the very top is an email from Karen Harper to you. Do you recall receiving this email?
No.
But you don't have any doubt that you, in fact, did receive it?
I don't have any doubt that this was sent.
Yeah.
You asked me if I recalled receiving it in 2007, and I don't.
Okay. And my questions primarily relate to the attachment.
Okay, are you saying I received this?
Yes, the email and the attachment were forwarded to you on December 2007. That's what the top email indicates. And my questions are going to primarily relate to this attachment.
I'm still having a difficult time figuring out where it says that this was sent to me.
Well, the very top email
Yes.
says from Karen Harper, and then
Right.
2 is to Bill Ratliff. Do you see that?
Yes?
Okay. And it's forwarding an email with an attachment.
Well, to be clear, E9 and A14 are our policies. They have nothing to do with the letters and the things you said are attached. So I'm just trying to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay. Well, why don't you review the attachment, and then
Okay,
I'll-
but you're
I'll
not,
have
you're not
questions
saying
for
I
you
ever
about that.
received it, you're just asking me to review it now.
yes, I'm saying that I'm saying that regardless of whether you received it or not, I would like to ask you some questions about this attachment.
Okay, I've read it.
Okay. So I guess my first question to you is, prior to today, do you recall ever reviewing this letter?
No,
Do you recall ever discussing this letter with anyone?
not to my knowledge.
Okay.
This is an 2006.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you know who Joseph T. Ranasisi is?
Yes, I do.
Do you know him?
No.
Okay. Do you respect his views?
Not necessarily.
Why not?
I've watched him on 60 Minutes, and he was in charge at that time, but didn't take any necessary action to assist the registrants. And he points fingers at everyone but himself, to be honest.
So this letter starts at the beginning. This letter is being sent to every commercial entity in the United States registered with the Drug Enforcement Administration to distribute controlled substances. So that would include Mallinckrodt, would it? Would it not?
If they say every registrant, the answer is yes.
Okay. Now, do you see in the middle of page 2, and actually let me put this up on the Elmo if it helps you. Okay, so do you see the sentence that I'm highlighting?
Yes.
Okay, so the DEA regulations require all distributors to report suspicious orders of controlled substances. And then underneath it, there is it's a cite to the regulations. And then it says, can you read that for me? What I just highlighted?
The registrant shall design and operate a system to disclose to the registrant suspicious orders of controlled substances. The registrant shall inform the Field Division Office of the Administration in his area of suspicious orders when discovered by the registrant. Suspicious orders include orders of unusual size, orders deviate substantially from a normal pattern, and orders of unusual frequency.
And this obligation applies to Mallinckrodt, correct?
It does. It's a statute.
And do you recall when this statute was enacted?
Objection.
I have no clue.
Okay,
Title
but it-
21 has many statutes, but it also has many revisions. They're all listed in the front of Title 21. So without having that information, there'd be no way for me to know that.
But whenever the effective date of this regulation is, that it applies to all registrants, including Mallinckrodt, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then, can you read this section right underneath it?
It bears emphasis that the foregoing reporting requirement is in addition to and not in lieu of the general requirement under Title 21, under 21 U.S.C. 823, parent E in parent, the distributor maintain effective controls against diversion.
And you would agree that also applies to Mallinckrodt?
It does.
Okay. Then on page 3, it shows circumstances that may be indicative of diversion. Do you see that?
I do.
And can you read the first one? It's right underneath, or right next to number 1.
Ordering excessive quantities of a limited variety of controlled substances, parent E period G period, comma, ordering only phentermine, hydrocodone, and alprazolam, while ordering few, if any, other drugs.
And would you agree that that is a circumstance that would raise cause for concern?
I read
Is that
it.
a red flag, sir?
I read it, but I don't know what you. Without additional information, I don't know. I've never seen this document before, and you're asking me to read it into the record, and then you're asking me questions about, is that a red flag? And I just don't have enough information to say, is it or isn't it? So, you know, I'm not even sure what 2 of the drugs are.
Well, let me put it another way. The DEA is saying that ordering excessive quantities of a limited variety of controlled substances, and then it gives examples of controlled substances, while ordering few, if any, other drugs, is a red flag. Do you agree with that?
Objection.
If that's what they're saying, that's what they believe.
And I'm asking you, sir, what do you believe?
I just don't know. I don't, as I said, I don't know what the other products are. I look at it in a different way. If they were ordering few of these and a lot of oxycodone, that would be a red flag, but that doesn't seem to be their point. So.
Well, but if you were to change this statement to say ordering excessive quantities of a limited variety of controlled substances, e.g. oxycodone, ordering few, if any, other drugs, would you agree with that statement?
Yes.
Okay. Then can you read number 2 for me?
Ordering a limited variety of controlled substance in quantities disproportionate to the quantity of non-controlled medications ordered.
Do you agree with that statement?
I do.
Okay. What about number 3? Can you please read that?
Ordering excessive quantities of a limited variety of controlled substances in combination with excessive quantities of lifestyle drugs.
And do you agree with that statement?
I don't know what those are. So I'm not going to say yes or no.
Okay. Well, when you say you don't know what those are, you don't know what, I take it you know what controlled substances means. Are you referring to the
What are
lifestyle drugs?
lifestyle drugs?
Okay.
What does that mean?
Okay. Well, moving on to point 4 then.
Okay?
Can you read that?
Ordering the same controlled substance from multiple distributors.
Do you agree that that is a red flag?
There's no way we would know that.
Well, I understand that. But if you had that information, would that be a
So
red
that's
flag to
a
you?
hypothetical. If we happen to have that information somehow, would that be a red flag? In that hypothetical, yes.
Okay.
But we would have no way to make that determination.
And then underneath that, there is a list of, well, can you review the list underneath that? It's another numeric list of 1 through 10.
I finished with number 10.
Okay. Are there any factors on this list of 10 that you do not agree are a red flag?
Objection.
If we had the information, enough information to make that assessment, those would be red flags. But you've gone from a manufacturer to a distributor to a pharmacy to a doctor. So what you're saying is, do I agree if I had all of that information? But you have to remember, we're the manufacturer, and we don't always have, we can't always mine down to, does the pharmacy accept insurance payments for controlled substances made via the internet? There's no way in the world we would know that. And there's a privacy issue there. Farmers charge reasonable prices. How would we know if it charges reasonable prices for their area? Does the pharmacy offer to sell controlled substances without a prescription? How would we know that? So if you want me to agree to this, we're going to have to get very specific on every line and what it means, so I'm correct when I answer your question.
Well, okay, so why don't we try that then?
Okay.
Starting with number 1, what percentage of the pharmacy's business does dispensing controlled substances constitute? Would you agree that would you agree that that's something that is, well, strike that. Would you agree that that's a red flag?
Objection.
I would agree that this is part of our form that we sent, so we would be able to delve into that information to determine how much controlled substance versus non-controlled substances the pharmacy orders. So we believe that would be a red flag. That's why we asked the pharmacies that question.
And I take it number 2 is the pharmacy complying with the laws of every state in which it is dispensing controlled substances. Clearly, if it were not, that would be a red flag. Is that correct?
There's no way we would have that information. And so you're asking me things that there's no way that I would know. So DEA should know that, but Mallinckrodt wouldn't necessarily know that, especially if the pharmacy is doing something nefarious. So would it be a red flag if one knew that? Well, yes, but how would one know that? So you're putting me in a position to answer questions there's no way I would know.
Well, for number 3, it's
Okay.
is the pharmacy soliciting buyers of controlled substances via the internet, or is the pharmacy associated with an internet site that solicits orders for controlled substances? I mean, that would seem to be one where you could both ask the pharmacy and go on the internet, right?
Objection.
Well, I don't know that you could find that out over the internet or how you would do that. I just don't know. And I've told you before, I'm not very technical. So soliciting buyers via the internet, I'm not certain how we would know that.
Well, you
So-
could ask the pharmacy if they engage in that practice, though, right?
Right.
Would it be worth it to ask them?
Objection.
It would. I don't know if that's on our form or not. I just don't know that.
Okay. Well, so let me take a step back then. For these 10 items, these are all things that presumably the pharmacy would know. Is that correct?
Objection, one.
The pharmacy should know if they're being nefarious, I would think. If they're doing things that are outside their, filling prescriptions, are there scripts written for those prescriptions? I mean, does the pharmacy often sell controlled substance without a prescription? I'm not certain that the pharmacy would tell you that if you asked them.
Sure, they
So-
might not tell you that, but they could certainly provide, some of these other categories, they could
Yeah.
provide that information. Is that
They could certainly
correct?
provide that to their distributor, because the distributor is the person who should know all this. They should be the ones investigating this and making these determinations. So we took it upon ourselves voluntarily to go into these situations and get as much information as we could through this form we developed. So,
And these are the types of questions, though, that distributors should be asking of their customers. Is that correct?
Objection.
Object.
the distributor possibly, but not the manufacturer. We did it voluntarily to get as much information as possible and to better, hone our programs so we could make those decisions in concert with the distributor too.
And you did it because you believed it would result in more effective diversion controls. Is that correct?
That's correct. Sorry. Are we through with that?
Yeah, we're done with that.
Okay.
Council, I think it's been about an hour, maybe time for lunch.
Sure. What time is it?
12:07.
Yeah, why don't we, how long a break do you want? So you want to
We
do?
can go off the record here.
Yep.
We're going off the record at 12.